What if I told you that while European universities were still teaching that the Earth was flat, students in Timbuktu were calculating planetary orbits and performing complex surgical procedures? When most people hear Timbuktu, they think of a remote, mythical place at the edge of the world. But during medieval times, Timbuktu was actually the Harvard, Oxford, and MIT of Africa, all rolled into one incredible center of learning. The University of Sankore attracted brilliant minds from across 3 continents, housed the world's largest collection of books outside Europe, and produced scholarship that wouldn't be matched in many European institutions for centuries. From groundbreaking astronomical observations to advanced medical treatises, Timbuktu's scholars were pushing the boundaries of human knowledge, while most of the world was still figuring out basic literacy. Let's explore how this West African city became the intellectual powerhouse of the medieval world and discover the incredible academic achievements that made European scholars jealous. Timbuktu's transformation from a seasonal trading camp to the intellectual capital of Africa is one of history's most remarkable academic success stories. Founded around 1100 CE as a seasonal settlement where Tuareg nomads would leave their goods, Timbuktu's location at the meeting point of the Niger River and trans-Saharan trade routes made it the perfect hub for both commerce and ideas. What turned this trading post into an academic empire was the Mali Empire's conscious decision to invest in education and scholarship. Under Mansa Musa's rule in the 14th century, Timbuktu received massive government funding for educational infrastructure. The emperor understood that controlling trade routes required intellectual sophistication, diplomatic skill, and administrative competence that could only come from world-class education. The city's academic reputation grew organically from its commercial success. Wealthy merchants funded madrasas and libraries, attracted scholars with generous salaries, and created an environment where intellectual achievement was both financially rewarded and socially prestigious. By the 15th century, Timbuktu had become a magnet for the brightest minds in the Islamic world. What made Timbuktu unique wasn't just the quantity of educational institutions, but their quality and specialization. The city developed distinct academic neighborhoods, each focused on different fields of study. The Sankore quarter became famous for Islamic jurisprudence and theology, while other areas specialized in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and literature. The University of Sankore wasn't just a school, it was an intellectual institution that would make modern universities envious of its academic standards and research output. What started as a mosque and informal teaching center in the 12th century had evolved by the 15th century into a fully fledged university with multiple faculties, standardized curricula, and degree-granting authority recognized across the Islamic world. The admission standards were remarkably rigorous. Prospective students had to demonstrate mastery of the Quran, fluency in Arabic, and competency in basic mathematics and logic before they could even apply for advanced study. The entrance examinations were so demanding that many students spent years in preparatory schools. Sankore competed with universities in Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba for the world's leading scholars, offering competitive salaries, research funding, and intellectual freedom. The university maintained correspondence networks with scholars across Africa, the Middle East, and even Europe. The physical infrastructure was impressive by any standard. The main campus included lecture halls accommodating hundreds of students, specialized laboratories for scientific research, astronomical observation towers, a medical clinic for practical training, and essentially a medieval printing operation for manuscript production. The degree structure was surprisingly modern. Students progressed through bachelor's, master's, and doctoral levels with comprehensive examinations at each stage. The doctoral thesis required original research defended before expert scholars, many traveling from other academic centers, specifically to evaluate candidates. The library system was the university's crown jewel. The main collection contained over 400,000 manuscripts, covering every field of knowledge available. All manuscripts were carefully copied by trained scribes, checked for accuracy by experts, and cataloged using sophisticated indexing systems. Timbuktu attracted and produced scholars whose intellectual contributions rivaled those of their more famous European and Middle Eastern contemporaries. Ahmad Baba al-Timbukti stands out as perhaps the university's most celebrated scholar. Born in 1556, he authored over 40 works covering Islamic law, theology, biography, and linguistics. His legal commentaries were so authoritative that they were consulted by Islamic courts across West Africa for centuries. When Moroccan forces captured Timbuktu in 1591, they specifically targeted Ahmad Baba because they recognized his intellectual influence was more dangerous than any military leader. Mahmud Kati authored the Tariq al-Fatash, one of the most important historical chronicles of medieval West Africa. His work combined rigorous historical methodology with literary sophistication, preserving crucial information about the Songhai Empire while demonstrating the high level of historical scholarship practiced in Timbuktu. The astronomer al-Maghili revolutionized astronomical observation in West Africa. His calculations of planetary movements were so accurate, they were later verified by modern equipment. He also developed innovative mathematical techniques for calculating prayer times and determining Mecca's direction from various locations. The medical scholar Ibn al-Mukhtar produced comprehensive medical texts combining traditional Islamic medicine with local African healing practices. His surgical manuals included detailed anatomical illustrations and step-by-step procedures for complex operations. European travelers reported witnessing surgical procedures in Timbuktu more advanced than anything available in European hospitals. International scholars brought global perspectives to Timbuktu's academic environment. Teachers from Al-Azhar in Cairo, the University of Al-Qarawiyyin in Fez, and other major Islamic centers spent years in Timbuktu, creating a truly international faculty exposing local students to diverse intellectual traditions. The manuscripts of Timbuktu represent one of the largest collections of written knowledge from medieval Africa, covering an incredible range of subjects that demolish stereotypes about African intellectual life. Conservative estimates suggest Timbuktu's libraries contained between 700,000 and 1 million manuscripts at their peak, making it one of the world's largest repositories of written knowledge during the medieval period. These weren't just religious texts, they covered virtually every field of human knowledge available. Islamic studies formed the foundation, but even these demonstrated sophisticated theological thinking. Commentaries on the Quran showed deep engagement with complex interpretive questions, while works on Islamic law dealt with practical issues specific to West African societies. These were original contributions to Islamic scholarship, not simple copies of Middle Eastern texts. Scientific manuscripts were particularly impressive. Astronomical texts included original observations of stellar movements, calculations of planetary orbits, and mathematical models for predicting eclipses. Medical manuscripts covered everything from pharmacology to surgery, with detailed anatomical drawings and step-by-step surgical instructions. Some included case studies demonstrating early evidence-based medical practice. Mathematical texts ranged from basic arithmetic to advanced algebra and geometry. Literary works included poetry, prose narratives, and literary criticism demonstrating high cultural sophistication. Legal manuscripts showed how scholars reconciled universal Islamic principles with specific African cultural practices. The production quality was exceptional. Professional scribes used high-quality paper and ink, creating documents surviving for centuries. The calligraphy was often artistic as well as functional, with illuminated manuscripts including decorative borders and illustrations rivaling anything produced in Europe. The subjects taught in Timbuktu's educational institutions covered a breadth and depth of knowledge that would impress modern academics and completely contradict stereotypes about medieval African education. Islamic jurisprudence formed the core of advanced study, but this wasn't just memorization of religious rules. Students learned sophisticated legal reasoning, comparative legal analysis, and practical problem-solving skills. They studied actual legal cases, participated in mock trials, and learned to apply universal principles to specific local situations. Astronomy was treated as both practical and theoretical science. Students learned to use astrolabes, calculate prayer times, determine Mecca's direction, and predict eclipses. They also engaged with advanced mathematical concepts like spherical trigonometry and geometric modeling using sophisticated instruments rivaling anything available in Europe. Mathematics education progressed from basic arithmetic through algebra, geometry, and what we would now call pre-calculus. Students learned practical applications for trade and commerce. but also explored theoretical concepts that pushed the boundaries of medieval mathematical understanding. Medicine combined theoretical knowledge with practical training. Students studied anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, and surgical techniques. The medical curriculum included clinical rotations where students worked with experienced physicians treating actual patients. Surgical training involved dissection and hands-on practice, providing much more practical experience than most European medical schools offered. History was taught as an analytical discipline rather than simple memorization. Students learned to evaluate sources, cross-reference accounts, and construct coherent narratives from conflicting evidence. The curriculum emphasized both local African history and broader Islamic world history, giving students sophisticated understanding of their place in global events. International relations and diplomacy were practical subjects for future administrators. Students learned negotiation techniques, cultural sensitivity, protocol, and strategic thinking about different political systems and religious traditions. Timbuktu's global connections made it a truly international university centuries before the concept became common in European education. Student exchange programs brought scholars from across the Islamic world to study in Timbuktu, while Timbuktu graduates traveled to continue their education in Cairo, Baghdad, Mecca, and other major centers. These exchanges created an intellectual network, facilitating the rapid spread of new ideas across continents. The university maintained formal correspondence with major Islamic institutions. Scholars regularly exchanged letters discussing research questions, shared manuscripts, and collaborated on projects despite being separated by thousands of miles. International recognition of Timbuktu degrees meant graduates could teach or practice anywhere in the Islamic world. Research partnerships with scholars in other cities led to collaborative projects advancing knowledge across multiple disciplines. Diplomatic connections meant Timbuktu scholars often served as ambassadors and advisors to rulers across West Africa and beyond. The book trade connected Timbuktu to global networks of manuscript production and distribution. If you enjoyed discovering how Timbuktu became the intellectual powerhouse of the medieval world, rivaling and often surpassing European universities of the same period, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more untold stories of African civilizations that were changing the world while Europe was still in the Dark Ages.